Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Damn Parenting, your English-speaking parenting podcast from Amsterdam, the Netherlands. As always, we are your hosts, Eva and
Maren.
This month has been ADHD Awareness Month, and you've heard from myself and my own story in a very typical ADHD story because it was all over the place when I listened back. We also had Emma, the ADHD potential coach, and Graham, the author of Jelly Pie Firefly, and her own family story of her child getting diagnosed with ADHD. So this episode, we're going to be closing up the month exploring ADHD in children within the school settings, focusing on the unique challenges students with ADHD face. And our guest today is Kate Patterson, a learning diversity specialist, and she's going to shed light on effective strategies for parents and educators and the importance of school-home collaboration. So with an estimated 3.3% of children in the Netherlands with ADHD, in this episode, our aim is to help families with children and ADHD succeed academically, socially, and emotionally. Kate, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. Yes.
Do you want to give us a little bit of background? Because as you just told us there beforehand, you're a little bit new to the Netherlands. So we'd love to hear more about you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so my name's Kate. I'm also the parent, but the kids are a lot older now. They're in their 20s. Background is in the field of communications and education for over 20 years now. And I've worked as a teacher in international schools with children from early years up to IB. And in the last 10 years, really focusing on supporting those who have diverse learning needs, including ADHD. I also will mention I'm a yoga teacher and somatic practitioner the last 15 years because I mention it because it does have a lot to do with managing energy, and it's a key part to actually some of the work I do within the schools. And also, very importantly, I am a fellow ADHDer.
Oh, hi. Nice to meet you. We're part of the group.
I know.
From your own experience.
Yeah, and that's got really basically what got me really about sort of 10 years ago down a rabbit hole, all of this stuff, understanding neurodiversity, learning, inclusion, and how it works in the education system, which is, the system within what I work. So yeah, I really get it, really understand the challenges. And there are really real, very real daily challenges of living in an ADHD household, big emotions and big feelings. So yeah, I'm happy to share what I can today.
Well, ADHD can affect a student's ability to focus, pay attention, listen, or even put effort into schoolwork. I know many of us have that procrastination feeling. The ADHD also can make student fidgety or restless or talk too much or disrupt class. And a lot of people associate the H with hyperactivity, so they can't keep still, they can't sit down, they can't stay in that circle. So the kids with ADHD might have learning disabilities that cause them to have problems then, therefore, in the school, as it's not really open and accepting to them, as they want them to adhere to the educational process that schools have implemented themselves. So what are the most common challenges children with ADHD face in the classroom, and how would these differ from the challenges at home?
I think probably there are going to be sort of similarities, but school is actually quite a structured day. So, there will be break times and things like that. But ADHDers, will find themselves sometimes actually, needing a little bit more break, or they'll need to kind of regulate themselves. And it's that dysregulated state that can, sometimes come out in school that can really, that's not a problem at home. And this is where things can sometimes get tricky. And that's why I think self-regulation and supporting children learning about how they, how they function and their energy levels is so key. And for me, that's a big part of the work I do, that we're looking at energy within the body and energy within the mind, and that the children also become more aware of that and their needs. And then they're able to advocate for their needs. And if they need to take a movement break, they can. And of course, these things are all structured and routine, but it's, these are the things that I advocate for the students I work with.
I love the idea of a movement break. It's kind of like
break. Yeah, all of these things. We know so much more now. When you're looking at the neuroscience and the psychology, we really do know so much more. And so if there is ever a time to be ADHD, yes, we've got the other stuff with all the technology and the smartphones and stuff, but we know so much more, and we can provide and put things in place that don't have to be disruptive to the classroom setting. So when I'm talking about breaks, I'm talking about setting a timer, and if that student has a structured routine, they can leave the classroom for 2 minutes. They need to walk up and down the stairs 3 times, then rejoin the classroom. It's things like that are realistic, not affecting other people around them, and is helping them regulate.
I have a question. Is it, just from my understanding, when we have a child who is affected by that and they're struggling in school with structure and it's not so much of a help, but more of a hurdle for them in the school setting? Is it then at home that the parent needs to create a very free environment where they can really then let go and follow their natural instinct or like their natural way of how they would want to act? Or is it then helpful where we implement a couple of those things from school that we know that are there and then we're practicing at home? So what's the go-to there?
Really, really good question. My answer to that would be at home, absolutely having, routines. And by that, I don't, this is, your day. I definitely recommend a soft start to the day or having check-ins. I would, literally the check-in as a parent to have a routine with your child that you're checking in, and again checking in with their body and their mind, where their energy levels are at and stuff, and having those regular check-ins can be really, really helpful. So when I talk about routines, I am not sort of talking about rules, and I'm talking about co-creating routines with your child, having the visuals, making things feel really safe, and that kind of environment where if they are easily dysregulated, they have their routines that they know they can fall back on. So I think these things can really be helpful at home as well.
Can I ask on that, what age group are you talking about here? Like how much and what age group are we involving them in?
Yeah, so when I'm talking about, I've worked with early years up to IB 18, 19-year-olds. And, by then they've hopefully, got their own routines in place that work for them. When I talk about sort of that co-regulating routines and stuff together, primary school age children. So, even when they're in, I don't know the Netherlands system. I'm in an international school. We have group 1, group 2, but certainly age-wise, from sort of 5, 6, 7, you can be co-creating these things and using visuals. It's pre-literate or whatever they have. You can and practicing, just having really, really sort of comfortable routines in place that are really clear, step by step. Breaking things down, again, back to school with the challenges, executive functioning skills. What do I mean by that? The time management, the self-management, being able to plan the task, and having all of these things is really, really tricky for ADHDers. It's something that is, we talk about, lagging skills, and this needs more attention and care and support. And instead of, often ADHDs have received a lot of sort of negative kind of responses to things because perhaps they're not getting it, or they've missed something, or they've lost something. And so it's looking at how can we support and put things in place and go along with them on the journey, instead of often parenting. And I know from, many years ago, what I know now, I would certainly do things differently. And that's why this work interests me as well, because of course, when you know more, you can, share and definitely being able to create with the child that they are a part, and learning how they function and learning what works for them and empowering them is really key.
And one of the things you were mentioning there, it just actually had me in my mind thinking about in school. For example, at home, we can do the transition from one thing to the next in our own time and take it easy. I'm just wondering about school. Is there what kind of we know that that's a major challenge for children in general, let's put it that way. But when it comes to for ADHD, what impact does that actually have?
I would definitely say teachers are far more informed now, and they will have really, a good class teacher is going to have routines in place. And if she knows she's got children in her classroom who really struggle with transitions, then there will be routines in place. Perhaps it's a countdown, perhaps it's a reminder, putting things in place to support those learners in the classroom. And it can be supporting others as well. And it's kind of universal, isn't it? So it can be helping those ADHDs, but it can also be helping someone else who just generally in that area struggles. So I think it's across the board that, knowledge is power, and a lot of teachers know this stuff. So I hope they do anyway, certainly the ones I work with.
I don't know why, but when you were talking there, I was thinking of like the massive countdown clock behind me and like the loud noise it's making. I was thinking, oh, that's very destructive.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a scary thing. I think I love visual timers, and I haven't got one to share with you now, but I can certainly.
I've got them.
Yeah, I can. Okay. You got all this stuff. Okay.
Of course.
They can absolutely, that they can see time.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That And that's really, really helpful. I mean, at school we've got kind of these bigger ones and stuff, but at home, I recommend to parents often, sort of send a little checklist of things that might be helpful.
So we're kind of getting into the strategies here. So that's really the next question is like, can you help us with the strategies for helping our children in school? Like, what is it that we can do as parents, and how can we help support them in a very routine-based environment?
Yeah, so at home, having those structures and routines, and also at school, making sure, that if they do need more support or more time and things like that, sharing with the teacher that your child would really help them to have a movement or a sensory break. No teacher's going to have a problem if this has got, we have clear expectations and high expectations of all students. And if they need that, and they, it's about needs here, and absolutely, they should be entitled to that.
When it comes to, so if we're communicating with the teachers, teachers are going to be well educated anyway in this. And so the thing is, if we're kind of like, well, we noticed this, honestly, I sometimes, like when my child was in daycare, they were telling me stuff about daycare that I was like, that my child does that? Like, I didn't even know. So that was the thing I was thinking of, is children act differently from home to school. So we might miss things as well.
Yeah, well, then that would definitely come down to when you do have, maybe this idea of parent-school collaboration, when you do get to go into the school and have that sort of 10-minute slot or things like that, sort of asking questions like finding out how they're getting on with their day. It's not just the academics in that moment, being curious and actually asking the teacher, how is my child handling the transitions in the school day? Are they struggling? Is this something, because we would like to support them with this, and if that's going to help you. And the teachers are absolutely on board. This idea of working with the class teacher and the parent, as a team to work on strategies to support that executive functioning stuff. That's something I definitely be asking when I speak with the teacher, how are they getting on with those transitions? And if they're, or if they're displaying any sort of sensory needs, for example, if the teacher's noticing they're going to the bathroom a lot, well, they might be better off having a movement break than going to the bathroom a lot and things like that. And
I think you mentioned a very important word where you said realizing that we are a team. So the parents and the teachers are a team. And really, I've said this in an episode before, but not creating this, oh, I know my child better, or them like, oh, but what do you know as a parent? Because I have them the majority of the day, kind of, like instead of we have to prove who knows the child better, who understands it better, see it as a chance. Wow, amazing. There is a person who experiences my child in a totally different environment and can give me so much more information that I would never be able to retain, and vice versa. So really seeing them as, this is my sparring partner. How can we both be on the same page to support the child the best? Because this is our goal in the end. The parent wants the best for the child. And as also the teachers, they want their students to succeed. They want their students to go on. They want their students to grow, to learn. I mean, this is why you go into this profession. So really, really important that you said this. It is a team effort, and working together will only benefit the child.
Oh, I'd love that. And I totally agree with it. And, other questions I would ask is how they respond to feedback as well. Because we also know with ADHD, they might have experienced lots of, sort of negative feedback. They've been unfortunate. And basically how they handle feedback, that would be a key question I'd be wanting to find out as a parent, and being, open. Are they someone who shuts down if they're giving negative feedback? And if so, then as a parent, I'd be, looking at growth mindset and, the power of yet, and what things are they struggling with, or, and having those conversations with them, that kind of thing. What we didn't touch on, and I really, really want to share or say to parents is, what strengths do you see in your child? So yes, we're talking about ADHD, and we're talking about, skills which are perhaps lagging and they're challenging and everything. But always, before we get to any of that, starting from the strengths and looking at it through a strengths-based lens. It's really so crucial, because then when you are then looking at perhaps creating routines and sort of breaking down tasks together, or, what works for your child and things like that, you already are knowing what their strengths are, and then you can adapt it to work with the strengths, if that makes sense, and not just going straight into what they find challenging.
One of the things I was just wondering, so I know like teachers, like what Maren was talking about, like teachers go into this because this is their passion, the teachers are there for them. But we also know that some parents have had some struggles with certain schools as well and certain teachers. So I was just wondering, what steps can schools themselves take to educate their own teachers and staffs and students about ADHD? Because it's a case of also, I think someone mentioned to me once, it's like it's by their own choice that they seek out extra additional education by a teacher. Like they'll choose what they're going to study. But it's a case of if their child has ADHD and they're in a school where there's nothing seen visually, or you don't hear of any like actual support mechanisms, is there a way that we can like approach a school or kind of know more about a school who are actually taking active steps and how they can actually progress that way as well?
Yeah, a good question. I think, this idea of creating an ADHD friendly environment, classroom or whatever, and I think as a parent, you're going to quickly find out whether your kid's in that kind of school or not. And if they're not, and you haven't got a choice, this is where your kid goes to school and things are like they are, and you can't, just change schools. Be interested in sort of reaching out and finding out. There'll be someone in that school who advocates and gets it, wanting to improve things. So definitely looking for like-minded people who are also keen to bring in these things, and a parent-school collaboration would also be something that you could look at. I know obviously within the Netherlands there is the parent council, or how they work with the school and things like that. There'll be someone on the board there who is responsible for those children who are neurodiverse or have additional needs and things like that. And through that route, that's also a way of finding out how the school manages things like that.
Wow, I didn't even think about that. I didn't even think about the parent council and how one person should actually, wow, that's actually pretty interesting. Thank you for that. That's actually a great insight to have, because as someone who's literally just started this whole school journey, I honestly feel like, one, I don't want to interfere with the teachers. I don't want to be a bother. I don't want to be someone. And I'm just kind of thinking, if someone's already entering into this, knowing that there's something on a neurodiverse level for their own child, is like, how must they be feeling kind of trying to navigate this and trying to also see where the child is and trying to meet them where they are with the school together. So it must be a very daunting task. So that's a great recommendation, to consider the parent council for any school. Yeah,
definitely recommend that. And also, looking at their policy, whatever school your child's at, they'll have policies on their website. Have a look at what is their inclusion policy.
Do you know, I did a Google Chrome translation for the school we were going to. I don't think I read anything about that now that I'm thinking about it. So it's a very interesting thing that it's because you're entering into such a new phase in life that it's really a complete new learning curve. And hence this episode is just a case of trying to get someone from the inside to kind of go, like you've said, go to the parent council, look at the policies on their websites, approach them, have conversations with them, have the collaboration. At the end of the day, you're the parent, they're the teacher, but together you're raising the child as well. It's really interesting what we don't think of, and we limit ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. I hope that's helpful, and also the relationship you have with the class teacher, and as you get to know them. And, as you said earlier, you are on the same side. Everybody is collaborating here. We want success. We want it to be a good, fruitful, thriving learning environment, and anything that's going to support your kid and help them with regulation and manage their day and their executive functioning skills and all of these things. This is helping everyone.
Can I ask, with your experience, do you actually bring in additional things? So we talked about having movement breaks. So, those kind of things. I was just wondering, I keep seeing lately those attachment rubber bands to chairs. Like there's a lot of ads sprouting at me. I don't know why, but I see those things that they're like, oh, if your child has restless leg and they're moving their legs, or, the fidget spinners, oh, you do this or do this. Do any of them actually benefit the child in school, for example?
Yeah, these extra resources we do have available, and for some of the students, and again, it's experimenting. It's literally finding out what works for my child, and it might work for when they're in group 2, but by group 4 that strategy doesn't work anymore. So also being open-minded and flexible, and again checking in and noticing what tools, and we're talking about tools that are going to support your child in the learning environment. And the rubber bands, my feedback on those, they can be helpful, absolutely. And it's something that if the class teacher is, and it's not disturbing anyone else, the class teacher's not going to have a problem with that. If you're saying, we've tried this at home, it was really helpful when they had to do a more sort of concentrated activity, can we try this out? And then also, when I am experiencing things like that, everyone in the class is obviously interested and curious. But the more these things become the norm and they've tried it out, if you don't need it, you don't need it and you don't want it. We have these wobble stools, or we have an extra one of those cushions. I don't know if you've seen those. That can sometimes be helpful. The kind of thicker wobble cushions and things like that. Some of the students I support, it helps them. So of course they're going to use it. And then everyone's curious, but after a while, they don't need it. It's the person who needs it is going to use it. So my feedback, absolutely, yes. If these things help, then we use them.
Do you think all schools have these, or is this something that like you notice that at home and you say, look, we're bringing this into school and this is where, we're going to use it?
Okay. Yeah, no, there's a lot of schools will have different seating plans, or depends what school you're at and how well resourced they are. And if they're not, and this is where it is sort of, an equity that, it's not also affordable for parents to be buying these resources. And so again, back to the parent side of things with, the council and things like that, finding out what resources are in our school and what is available. If it's something that does cost something and you can't just go out and just buy a wobbly cushion or whatever, find out who in the school is kind of responsible for those things. I don't know in the Netherlands, the name. In the UK, there's like the SENCO, Special Educational Needs Coordinator. In the role I do now, they're called Learning Diversity Specialists. There's different titles. There's Learning Support Teachers, and find out in your school who is in that role. And then they'll be aware of the resources the school has.
That's incredible. I coming from a long time ago in my school, with the nuns and everything else, it's one of those things that it's such a different world. And in the Netherlands, with the variety of educational opportunities they have here, if you have a Dalton or Montessori or Jena plan or anything else, like there's so many different options. This has actually been really insightful. Thank you so much, because it's really kind of giving people a nice light on different paths that they can now look on in the school and not feel quite isolated in, I have to do it all at home and bring it to the school. But it's a case of actually it's a conversation to have.
Generally in education at the moment, this idea of well-being and everyone's well-being and inclusion and the meeting the needs of everyone in that class, and our classrooms are becoming more neurodiverse, and having that awareness is key, and we do know a lot more than we did before. And I hope parents who are listening to this that they're in a school who is also on that journey.
Do you have any more questions, Maren? Sorry,
Just to wrap this up, and speaking of conversations, do you have any last helpful tips when we as parents want to seek out to have conversation with the head of the school, like the head teacher or the teacher in the classroom? Is there anything that you find helpful that parents should bring into those conversations when they're either confronted with this by the school, when the school addresses these things and the parents might have not been aware that there might be a diagnosis to be had or not, or vice versa, also when the parents are aware and they do want to start a conversation, but maybe experience backlash from the school side? So is there any tips that you can share with the parents that are going into those conversations where you have experience from your work? These are common phrases that you have to hear or deal with, and how can we counter them?
So if you're a parent who suspects that their child has got something going on and they're not sure, be curious and call that meeting with the class teacher and ask them, what are they noticing? You're noticing these things at home. How is it at school? Being really curious and trying to find out, about those transitions in the day, or how they're getting on socially. Are they displaying sensory needs? Does the teacher noticed anything and things like that? Again, that one about the feedback, how they respond to feedback, and also ask them what they're noticing about. So being curious, finding out more. And if it's coming from the school side and they're inviting parents in and they're saying, we've been experiencing this and we've been noticing this from the parent side, I'd also, if they're surprised and they're absolutely feeling this is not the child I've got at home and this is what they're experiencing at school, also, this opens up also lots of questions and being open-minded, being curious to find out what's going on. Because also, what might be tricky at school and then they might be at home totally, comfortable and fine. And therefore, that's also, so when something is extreme going on, it just being really open-minded about it is probably the most helpful way of moving forward.
Kate, thank you so much for joining us. I think this has been, I'm learning so much, and, I don't even know if my own daughter has it. I mean, since I myself have it, it's been quite a learning experience this much talking to everyone. So thank you so much for really helping us there, and hopefully shedding a light for many parents who are listening to know that there are pathways, there are people they can reach out to. Yeah, giving us a bit of hope the fact that all schools should actually have something in place, and it's not going to be a case of it's only because of your school, your position that you're able to do this, but they're actually scattered around the country, hopefully in every single school that there is for everyone. So thank you for that. We're closing off the ADHD Awareness Month. We hope you've enjoyed listening to it. As I said, I gave my ramblings at the start. We've had Emma on for the parents and how to actually manage themselves. And we've had Anne Graham on about her own daughter's diagnosis and how she wrote the book Jelly Pie Firefly. And Kate now, who is with schools. So we've kind of given a round for everyone, I think, in the family. And we really hope that all episodes have actually helped someone out there. And as always, please do share this with anyone who may benefit from this, because at the end of the day, this is what this podcast is for.
And while you're at it, sharing this episode, also make sure that you subscribe to our channel on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And also give us a like and follow on Instagram, Damn Parenting Podcast. This is also where you can reach out to us or write us an email, damnparentingpodcast@gmail.com. You know that we have a vast library of content built up over the last year. So make sure that you bring awareness to your friends who are also parents, that we have put the knowledge out there with the expert that we invite every Wednesday to the table to have a little chat about a topic that we found interesting or the community thought needs to be answered. So make sure that you like, subscribe, and follow and share with whomever you think needs to hear this information. And we'll hear on the next episode. Bye-bye.
Bye.